Chair calls the Greenwood Leflore Consolidated School District Special Call Meeting for August 16, 2021 to order. Can we please bow our heads for a moment of silent prayer? Amen. Chair will entertain a motion to amend the agenda to include policy JBCDA, J as in Jack, B as in boy, C as in cat, D as in dog, A as in apple. Policy JBCDA to 3.1 and moving everything else down.
So moved. Second.
It's been motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion is carried. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the amended agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion is carried. Dr. Brown.
Good afternoon. Policy JBCDA.
All right, board members, I got a call before I came in. Mr. Pulley, the attorney, can you hear?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
Okay, I got a call about children not being able to go to school since school has started, and it's dealing with employees who work in the district. And so I sent this policy. I got it for you right quick because I can't interpret it. So maybe if you can advise us on what to do about children who parents work here and they want their children to go to school. Could you advise us on what are the proper steps, or can they do it, or what is the law?
So we have employees who live outside of the district that want their children to go to school in our district. Is that correct?
So I don't really know if they live outside of the district. I know they work here, and I'm not really sure what their address is, but they work at one of our schools. And their children have gone to our schools in the past, and they said it would be a hardship because the children are underage and no one will be there to accept or intercept them when they get off the bus. And the mother works at one of our schools.
Okay, I do understand what the issue is. The issue is that the parent lives in a zone that I think the parent wants the child, seems like, to go to the school where she works, so she won't have to try to figure out who is going to receive the child in the evening. So the policy JBCDA allows for transfer of students within the district upon the parent's request. It does allow for that. Has the parent requested that the child be transferred?
This is my first time. I just got this call not even an hour ago. But Ms. Lewis said that she would like to add something to this conversation.
Dr. Brown, this is the same young lady that I called you in reference to, and you advised me to have her call you.
Right, so that young lady just left my office this morning, and we had a conversation with her. Going back and reading that policy, I think the policy calls for employees who live outside of the district to allow their kids to come into the district, if I'm not mistaken. But what I told the young lady this morning was that I would mention that to the board today, so I didn't know that she called again. But she came to see me this morning, and so I did mention to her that I would mention it to the board today to see if the board would consider approving or not approving, depending on what that policy says. I did state to her that if the policy needs to be changed, that would be a board decision. So I wasn't able to get back with her because she just came to my office this morning.
Well, I didn't get a call from a young lady. I got a call from a young man. So I want to make sure the record is straight.
Also, the young lady also had a young man who called on her behalf as well.
Okay. Attorney Pulley?
Yes, ma'am. The policy clearly says, JCCDAC, that the parent has moved and the place of residence is now located outside the attendance boundary of the student assigned to school. And not necessarily the district boundary, but the attendance boundary. But it says, but remains within the district boundary, and completion of the current school year would be in the best interest of the student. So this policy suggests it allows for the student to be transferred inside of the district, and allows for the student to be transferred where a parent lives outside of the district and wants their child to go to a school within the district. It does both, actually.
So what would be the
This
next?
parent would be,
So what would be the next step to get these children in school?
the policy says that the parent shall request in writing on forms provided by the district to the principal or the designee of the school, the student currently attends. And then it says that the building principals of sending and receiving schools will consult and must mutually agree to transfer. It says if either principal objects to the transfer, the request will be denied.
Say that last statement one more time.
It says that if any principal objects to the transfer, then the request will be denied. But clearly it's saying that it's allowed as long as the principal of the sending and of the receiving school is mutually agreeing upon allowing the child to transfer.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Brown, so is there any kind of way that you can convey this to the parent and to the principal?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Attorney Pulley. Dr. Brown.
Greenwood High School update.
So, yeah, I was wanting to know, is everybody back at school?
Yes, the students returned today, and today is Monday. The students returned today for Greenwood High School. Prior to returning, we did offer the COVID testing for students in Greenwood High School's gym, but students have returned to school at Greenwood High School today.
So all faculty and staff and students that were affected by this, have been tested?
I know it was the ones who were quarantined. The school was closed, but there were individuals who those students stated that they came in contact with. They had to quarantine, and then they also had to have a negative test before coming back. Make sure that's totally correct, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, all those students that were placed under quarantine did have to test. They had to quarantine for those 7 days, and then they had to submit a negative test. Greenwood High did host testing on Friday for all of those individuals that may have had problems getting a test from any outside agency. And if they weren't able to, they was able to be tested by our school nurses on Friday. And I do know, as indicated from my nurses, they tested about 100 students on Friday, and of those 100, 4 did come back positive on Friday. But due to the fact that they was already in quarantine and it wasn't any contact tracing involved with those particular students.
So Dr. Brown, do we have a plan in place about them making up those days?
For the students at Greenwood High, they're not penalized, no instruction was missed, so the teachers will pick back up where they left off. We did utilize that week for students to pick up Chromebooks for Greenwood High, so teachers were there issuing Chromebooks as well, but they will pick up where they left off today.
So you saying that those days won't be penalized?
No, ma'am. for students. Students, they cannot be penalized for, being out on quarantine.
So Dr. Brown,
Mr. Pulley,
Yes, ma'am, but I don't know what happened with that phone, but it turned off.
okay. So what was the last thing you heard?
I did not hear, the last thing I heard was, the question about whether or not, were all the students and the teachers, back at Greenwood High School.
Okay, and I asked Dr. Brown, did we have a plan for them to make up the days? And she said due to COVID that those kids would not have to make up those days.
Is there an order or any type of directive from MDE that says that you don't have to make up the days due to COVID? The reason why I asked that question, the statute says, of course, that they have to have a certain number of days for instruction. It would not be uncommon for MDE to waive that requirement. I know they probably waived it last year. Have they waived that requirement?
Also at Greenwood High School, the teachers did create the instructional package because the kids did not have the Chromebook, so they do have work. And moving forward, now that they do have the Chromebooks, in the event that anyone has to quarantine, they will have access to that particular teacher or their teachers. But they do have instructional packets.
Also, out of the 100 children that were tested, 4 came back positive, but Mr. Johnson stated, could you say that again?
Because we were not in session that week, there were no close contacts as it related to the school itself.
Did you hear that, Mr. Pulley?
I think I heard that there was no close contact.
Correct, because they weren't in school.
Okay.
Dr. Brown, how were those packets, disseminated?
Dr. Pulley, can you speak on the instructional package?
Good afternoon. The instructional packets were created by teachers and members of the curriculum team, and the principals assisted with making those copies, and then they were also distributed. Some I've noticed also distributed along with the Chromebook, since students were already out there. So for the most part, that I am aware, all the students picked up the Chromebooks, and then those who may not have had access to internet and that kind of thing, they did have instructional packets. All schools were instructed to go ahead and create and distribute instructional packets in the event that students had to quarantine before we issue Chromebooks.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other question, board members? Dr. Brown?
3.2, School Board Policy AFC, authority for emergency closing.
So this policy, and board members, did I see y'all a copy of this AFC? So if you can look at your telephones and pull it up. So there was a discrepancy with me, up on the application from school board. The superintendent of schools may close any school because of blah, blah, blah. So we have had Mr. Pulley to get an expedited Attorney General's opinion to what that phrase means. And what's the status of that, Mr. Pulley?
Sometimes those expedited opinions could be 1 week, sometimes it could be 2 weeks. I remember about 2 years ago when we had to get an expedited opinion, I think I might have gotten it within 10 days. I will double check on it for you, the board, close to the end of the week, just to see if they have their opinion
Correct.
that, board members, part of the confusion, is that, Ms. Milton and, myself, upon looking at this policy, it seems to be some contradiction as to who has the authority to close the school, whether it's the superintendent alone, and then later tells the board, or whether it's the board's decision, prior to, the superintendent making that call. The policy based upon application from the school board, the superintendent of schools may close any school because of an epidemic prevailing in the district. And then later in that sentence, in the paragraph, it says the superintendent is hereby authorized to declare an emergency and close the school. And I believe that our policy goes on to say that the superintendent may close the school and then later inform the board of the decision. Now, practically, board members, I think we can remember the bad snowstorm a couple of months ago. I know that if it snows or has ice on the road in the middle of the night, well, it would be impractical to call a board meeting at 5 o'clock in the morning. But our policy cannot deviate from state law. So if the Attorney General's opinion states that the board shall pre-approve all school closures, then I would suggest that at any time possible that the administration believes that the school would or should be closed, that we call some sort of virtual meeting immediately, and let the board approve that. If the AC's opinion says that the superintendent shall have that authority, then that would be no reason to change the policy.
Any questions, board members? Could you speak to them about what I told you about state law, Attorney Fuller?
Our policy can be, we can add to our policy, remove things from our policy, but it cannot deviate from what state law is. So, some portions of this policy that we have is in accordance with Mississippi Code 3713, I believe it's 65. But some parts of it is not. It's okay to have language in our policy that is not in statute, but we can't do anything that deviates from it. Meaning, if the legislature said we have to do certain things, we cannot deviate from it unless MCE gives us a waiver that says we can't do it. So that is the contradiction, and I'm hopefully we can get to the answer soon. Very soon.
Thank you, Attorney Fuller. Any other questions, board members?
No question, Madam President, just a comment. I personally would like to thank Dr. Brown and her administration for making the decision to close Greenwood High based upon the information that was at their disposal. And I too, as Attorney Fuller mentioned, think that it can be very cumbersome to try to call a board meeting at the 9th hour in regards to trying to close down a school for safety purposes.
Any other comments, board members?
I have a question, Attorney Pulley. There is a word in here, and I'm just trying to get a definition of this word, upon application. Can you discuss that word, that term, please?
Yes, ma'am. That is our request to the Attorney General's office. Upon application, the phrase seems to be in contradiction. Upon application to the just general word would mean it doesn't necessarily, application could not necessarily mean authority. So I don't know if that is meaning making a petition to the superintendent or asking the superintendent, or if that's meaning that the superintendent has to be pre-approval. That is the question that Ms. Milton asked, and that is the reason we are seeking an Attorney General's opinion, because there is no current opinion available from the AG's office after my research that answers that question specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Brown?
Yes, ma'am.
COVID-19 updates and protocols. Mr. Johnson, can you provide updates and protocols that the district used? I'm assuming that's the information that's needed.
And I guess so I can be clear, when we talk about updates and protocols, of course, each week our nurses must submit to the Mississippi Department of Health our weekly COVID updated information from the previous week. That information has to be sent in. It was by noon every Monday. They recently sent an email out today saying those numbers have to be reported by 5 p.m. on Monday. So our nurses in the process of updating those numbers to sending those surveys for our schools for this past week as far as the COVID numbers. Our protocols still follow the updated Mississippi Department of Health guidelines as it relates to anyone testing positive for COVID, whether they're vaccinated or unvaccinated. They must isolate for 10 days, and that's 10 days consecutive.
Okay, Dr. Brown, so as it relates to the classroom, are we still practicing social distancing, like 6 feet apart, a certain amount of number in the classroom?
No, those guidelines changed from 6 to, I think, 3 feet now. So the guidelines have certainly changed, so the number of students have changed.
So do y'all know the number of students that's supposed to be in the classroom?
Well, it depends on the size of the classroom. Each school varies. I know the size of the classroom will depict
Okay, but
the
I'm just
number.
saying, give me an example of a classroom and how many is supposed to be in there.
I would say, just knowing Threadgill class sizes, I want to say socially distant 3 feet apart. Those larger classrooms, you probably can get up to 25 students. I think that was the recommended number. Of course, some classrooms that are smaller, you have a reduced number of students that could do those classrooms. Recent walkthrough, I think at Claudine Brown, we had about 16 to 17. Some of the classroom was a little bigger that could get 20. Like I said, one kindergarten classroom, I know we could get 24. I did the spacing in that particular classroom myself. So it just varies from class to class, depending on size and the setup that the teacher has for those particular classrooms.
Okay. And what about the cleaning of the rooms, Dr. Brown?
So we are still following those guidelines as well. You have, teachers are sanitizing. We have, if they have instructional assistants, they're helping, and our custodians are doing the same as well.
Okay. So like when you were at East this morning, did you see students, faculty, and staff following those protocols?
I drove through East, but I have gone inside of East, and yes, I have. I've seen the custodians do it as well. I've seen office staff do it as well.
So did y'all provide us with a copy this year of the protocols for each school?
The protocols are listed in the district's reopening plan.
But I'm saying, like with y'all plan, like what you said about every school, do we have that? Like the number of kids that's supposed to be in what size room and all that?
No.
Okay.
No, the sizes, the number of kids depend on the size of each room.
Okay. All right, Dr. Brown.
MSBA hiring.
Okay, board, Ms. Flowers, could you look in the, if you don't mind, in our minutes from our last board meeting and see what was the statement that was made about MSBA? We could go on to the next one until she, finds it for us. So, and we'll come back to that one. So with that being said, board members and Dr. Brown, the chair will entertain a motion to, Chair will entertain consideration to close this meeting for consideration of executive session. It's been motion is second, all in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion is carried.